Hello, welcome to the research proposal lecture that is intended to provide you with guidance in terms of constructing your research proposal. Firstly, to understand the research proposal and its purpose. Its purpose and its form is to actually be able to start to construct a guidance of how you intend to organize and resource your research. Now, the research proposal is constructed into specific sections. Firstly, it's for you to actually be able to decide on a subject area. Furthermore, it's for you to actually construct a research question. Additionally, having constructed the research question, it's to construct a literature review. Ideally, then to formulate a theoretical framework. Furthermore, it's to construct and decide on your methodology. A further section relates to the methods. Furthermore, it's to decide on the process of data analysis. Thereafter, it's to decide on how you want to publish and circulate your research proposal. Okay then, so what I want to do now is actually just go through those main sections, and I'll do that furthermore within this lecture. Okay, so now in terms of the subject area, many of the students actually use the research proposal exercise as an initial sort of process of starting to creatively think about their third year dissertation. So although the research proposal was constructed in the second year, many students actually use it as an opportunity to start to actually be able to formulate, creatively think about the opportunities and challenges and limitations and complexities that they might encounter in relation to conducting their research for their dissertation in the third year. So your subject area can be something of relevance now, but you can think also long-term in terms of what you would like to study for your dissertation. Now, a further section is the research question, and this is an incredibly important aspect of the research proposal. I very often say to students that spend time extensively on your research question, because once you've formulated a very good and effective research question, everything else will fall into place. So spend time on your research question. Now, your research question is the main question you're trying to be able to answer in terms of your research. The main thing is to try to make the research question not so specific that it could be answered by yes or no, but not so expansive and convoluted that it will be nigh on impossible for a single researcher with obviously limited resources to actually be able to answer. So construct your research question. Now, provide a theoretically informed account of how you have come to this research question. So look at your field, look at the questions that are asked in terms of your subject area, and look at where there might be gaps, and look at where you might be able to make an original contribution. Now, your research question doesn't have to be extraordinary or spectacular in terms of its phenomenon. Sometimes the ordinary is just as interesting for a sociologist. So consider a research question that has originality but also has practical application, and you're able to do as a single researcher within the field. Okay, the next section in terms of your research proposal is the literature review. So this is a review, for this exercise, this is a review that is looking at key studies within your field. It would be good to actually look at key empirical studies within your subject field. So you've been asked to actually provide an annotated bibliography as one of the formative assessments. So you've already started to look at literature. So this section actually encourages you to actually do a review of literature, look at various bibliographic, archive resources, and actually identify some key literatures relevant to your subject area. You might start to think about the theoretical framework, which is the key perspective that you position yourself within. But the main thing is for you to actually formulate and research and write, in terms of development, your literature review. Okay, so the next section in terms of your research proposal is methodology, and this is a very, very important section. So methodology refers to the logic that is informing your methods and the application of your methods. It has a large part to do with the way in which you're designing your research. So you need to provide a theoretically informed methodology. Now, it might be a case that your research topic area, you have come to know it epistemologically, you have come to know it as existing quantitatively. And if so, therefore, you will have a quantitative methodology. And so this is basically assuming that the social world is constructed by objective phenomena and that causal relations between objective variables can provide an understanding of the phenomena. So that's a quantitative methodology informed by a positivist epistemology. And so your quantitative methodology would focus very much on what we describe as hypothetico-deductive reasoning. And here it's a case of actually developing a hypothesis, which is a theoretically informed proposition about the existence of your phenomena. And so you would, with this quantitative methodology and its hypothetico-deductive reasoning, you would have a hypothesis. And this hypothesis will have a theoretically informed proposition about the relationship between two or more entities, either correlational or causational, but it will propose an understanding, an explanation of the relationship between two or more entities. And it will propose an explanation, therefore, of your phenomena. And so the main thing with hypothetico-deductive reasoning is for you to actually prove your hypothesis to be true. Okay, so methodologically, a quantitative methodology will very often have as its basis hypothetico-deductive reasoning. Methodologically, you might be informed by an epistemology that assumes the social world to be subjective, largely, and to be understood and created through subjective meaning. And if so, that the basis here of your methodology would be qualitative. And so your qualitative methodology would be about designing your research to be able to understand and explore your phenomena in terms of the analysis of qualitative meaning. And so here you have been introduced to a quite significant array of qualitative methodological approaches. So you've been introduced, for example, to feminist qualitative methodologies that are very much premised on designing the research in a way to actually be able to, firstly, ensure and address what are seen to be inequalities of power between the respondent and the researcher. and also to design the research to actually raise consciousness in relation to a phenomena. Moreover, the feminist research will design the research in order to provide recognition of the value of subjective meaning, and also to actually be able to explore how the private lives of women, for example, are significant and valuable resources in terms of understanding public and social phenomena. And so the feminist social research methodology, qualitative, will be keen to actually be able to bear witness to and give value to the private everyday lives of women as being a valuable resource in conjunction with the often celebrated focus on the public sphere. And if you were to do a feminist qualitative methodology, you'll see, as you're starting to read about feminist methodologies, how in recent years women of colour have introduced into the very good writing on feminist methodology the need to actually focus also on race in conjunction with class and their intersections in terms of gender as actually being a necessary feature in terms of the design of the research. In relation to the latter feature in terms of feminists of colour, in terms of diaspora decolonial studies, a very good book here would be Patricia Hill Collins' Black Feminist Thought, but obviously there are others. Okay, so far I've looked at your subject topic and looked at your research question. I've looked at the need for you to conduct a literature review, have some indication of your theoretical framework. I've looked at the need to then formulate a methodology. And the main issue here is your methodology is the logic that informs your method and the application of your method. So it's a theoretically informed logic. I've looked at how if your methodology, as informed by a positivist epistemology, is therefore quantitative, you will design the research to actually be able to capture a world and a phenomena that you think is predominantly constructed quantitatively. Conversely, methodologically, your research might be informed by an interpretivist epistemology, whereby epistemology, as you know, is how we come to know about the phenomena. And if it's informed by an interpretivist epistemology, your methodology will invariably be qualitative. You've been enlightened by a whole array of qualitative methodologies in terms of visual qualitative methodologies, visual ethnographic qualitative methodologies. You would have had some insights in relation to the methodological sort of basis of online research, for example. Moreover, in terms of lectures you've had in relation to the triangulation of quantitative and qualitative data. So you've been introduced to key methodological features of qualitative methodology and quantitative. Moreover, staying with methodology, you might methodologically want to focus on a logic that provides a basis for the combining of the qualitative and the quantitative, and therefore your methodological logic would be triangulation, here informed by Norman Denzing for example, in his famous book, The Research Act. So methodologically, you might want to design your research to combine qualitative and quantitative. So methodologically, you might inform that through triangulation, whereby triangulation theoretically is arguing for the necessity to actually understand a phenomenon from different perspectives. And a key reading there would be Norman Denzin's The Research Act, whereby, as you might be aware, Norman Denzin discusses triangulation as having four main forms. Data triangulation, the use of a particular method in different spaces and different times. Then we have researcher, investigator triangulation, and this is less relevant to yourselves, but the use of more than one investigator within the research. And then you have theoretical triangulation, and this is the introduction into your sampling of a completely different theoretical basis to somehow be able to really sort of challenge and really sort of provide alternative data to which you had already envisaged might be an explanation of your phenomena. And the fourth he discusses as methodological triangulation, and here he talks about within method, and that's the use of different types of qualitative and quantitative techniques within the method, for example, in terms of a survey, having open and closed questions. And then also he discusses across methods, which is the one that you often are familiar with, which is using different methods. But the main thing here is that methodologically, you would say that your combining of qualitative and quantitative methodologically is informed by triangulation, by the need to actually be able to understand your phenomena from different perspectives. Okay, a further section of your research proposal is method. And so this is literally the technique that you're going to use to actually be able to collect your data. So if your methodology is quantitative, you're going to use quantitative techniques. So you're going to use, for example, a questionnaire to actually be able to collect what you think is a quantifiable phenomena. If your research methodology is qualitative, you're going to use methods, you're going to use data collection methods that actually are able to collect subjectively meaningful qualitative data. So you'll probably be using semi-structured, unstructured, narrative, interviews, for example, ethnographic techniques, if you think that the phenomena exists in a way that is best understood through viewing and observation, for example. Or you might use various visual semiotic techniques informed by, obviously, Saussure, or if you're looking at understanding the visual in terms of ideology, Roland Barthes, obviously, mythologies. Excellent. Okay, then, well done. So far, thank you for listening. Okay, then, so your methods are the techniques you're going to use. Your method is going to be tied to the methodology. So if you've chosen a quantitative methodology, your method will be quantitative. If you've chosen a qualitative methodology, your method will be qualitative, okay? And one of the final sections for your research proposal is the data analysis. And once again, this is logically linked to the method and also, therefore, to the methodology. So if your methodology is quantitative and you've chosen quantitative methods, maybe a survey, for example, a structured survey, the data analysis, the data you'll be producing is quantitative, so therefore it has to be analysed quantitatively. So you might actually provide for it sort of a simple descriptive statistics. For example, you might be looking at mean, mode, or medium in relation to your descriptive statistics. Now, if your methodology is qualitative and your method is qualitative, then your qualitative methods, interviews, visual ethnography, etc., well, then your data analysis is going to be having to be able to analyze qualitative data. And so, for example, if your method is narrative interviews, you will use as your data analysis, yes, you've guessed it, narrative analysis. And so it will be about looking at the interview transcripts and understanding them in terms of the story that is being told by the respondent, understanding this categorically in terms of its parts or holistically in terms of the whole. But the main issue here is that your data analysis is being predefined by the method, because the method has already started to generate a certain type of data that will predefine and direct your data analysis. Okay, and so that was my main intention, to identify these key features of the research proposal. A further key feature which we often have towards the end of the research proposal is your time scale. And so what you need to do is actually identify how long you envisage the research will take. Now, this is not a case of just identifying random dates, but rather think through the challenges involved in terms of access, sampling, for example, in terms of how long the interviews will take. And so therefore be realistic and practical in terms of identifying the time frame for your research proposal. And then the final category of information to include, obviously, is your bibliography and references, and reference all the material that you have sourced using Harvard. Okay, so that was my main objective, just to introduce you to the structure, the purpose, and guidance in relation to the design of your research proposal. I'm available if you want to talk further about your research proposal, so merely just email me and I'll respond, as always. So thank you very much for your time, and enjoy the remainder of the lecture.